Oleksandr, nice. Thank you for joining in. We hope you can hear us fine.
Yes, good morning. I can hear you well. Please excuse me for being slightly late.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gryban. Thank you very much. So let us start our presentation. Mr. Gryban, thank you for joining us. I will give a few words of introduction on the French Chamber of Commerce, who we are, what we do, and maybe present you the themes or the questions that we would like to discuss with you today. So the French Chamber of Commerce exists in Ukraine since 1994. We have currently we are representing 160 French companies present in Ukraine, which have invested in Ukraine. We are, as France, as you might know, is maybe the fifth or sixth largest investor traditionally in the country. We are the main foreign employer in Ukraine. We are present in all sectors of activity, from banking sector with two large banks, BNP, Crédit Agricole. We are present in distribution, retail business. We are present in the distribution of car imports and the car industry with two large players. We have production sites in the agro sector. Of course, France is quite present because this is a large activity in France also, with companies like Lactalis, Bell, Bongrain present. We have, so we can say, and we are pretty proud to say that French companies since the beginning of the war have shown, like, and we want to underline that Ukrainians' resilience since the beginning of the war, and the French companies have reorganized themselves, reorganized their activity. Almost all our members have remained in Ukraine, continue their activity. And we keep looking also for the future and stand by Ukraine. Today's topic is about the reconstruction. We thank you, and you came in December for the conference organized in Paris with President Macron. Mr. Macron explained that the reconstruction starts already today, because there is a lot of needs, of course, in Ukraine, and France wants to stand along Ukraine for this long process. Today's topic, and I will let you the floor, is really to maybe so at the French Chamber of Commerce we are trying to gather information, coordinate the information, coordinate the efforts of the French companies, because we believe there is a need to divulge as much information as we can and have people stand on the same level of information. So we thank you for your presence today, and we would like you, maybe if you can, to present us first the reconstruction, what it means, what Ukraine, how do you, on your perspective, see the needs and the way to organize it. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this intro. Again, I wanted to thank you as a separate note for being present in Ukraine in these difficult, challenging times, supporting your employees and supporting Ukrainian economy. This really means a lot to us. Just so you understand, like the bridging of the budget deficit that we're currently facing is for roughly 50% covered by the macro-financial aid that we're getting from our partner countries. And at least 50% is covered by the taxpayers in Ukraine. And I do recognize the big contribution of the international companies, and especially the French companies that are present in Ukraine and continue paying taxes, continue paying the social duties, etc. So this really means a lot to us. And in essence, the whole idea of working with international financing and attracting different sources of funding for Ukraine in different forms, starting again from the macro financial aid that we're discussing on the multi-donor coordination platform with the G7 countries, and specific designated efforts of the countries that are falling out of the G7 but are really willing to help, and ending with specially purposed credit lines and designated financing coming with expert credit agencies like BPE France, for instance. They are all aimed at creating some additional value in Ukraine. They're all aimed at support of the economy, because we do figure out that we will not be able to be bridging the budget deficit forever with the help of our partners. That's why we want to support our economy. We want to support the enterprises that are local or that have like local subsidiaries from the international companies there in Ukraine. And we are setting up a number of government support programs that can be used by the local companies, starting from some grants for SMEs and macro grants to a compensation of the interest rate in local currency under the program 579 through the Business Development Fund, which I think that the local people who are working in Ukraine are quite familiar with, and it's actually working through commercial banks. And separately, we are making sure that the programs of the international finance institutions that are traditionally active as the first loss kind of layer in Ukraine, it's also supported, and that's what also being discussed with the donors, and especially we are making sure that institutions like IFC or EBRD get some relevant concessional financing funding liabilities that would enable them to mobilize more funds. And for instance, we already understand that EBRD is preparing more than 1.4 billion lending programs for Ukraine at the moment, which will also include the special refinancing lines for the trade finance that will be channeled through the commercial banks in Ukraine, and direct loans to the enterprises for like business development or again the trade support. IFC will be mobilizing at least $1 billion, having $500 million of the donor funding. Again, supporting different sectors from agri-processing to logistics to energy. Then we are setting up, and this should be discussed on this platform on the 5th of April, where the next steering committee is going to happen. We're pushing the idea of setting up a special war risk insurance trust fund that should serve as the reinsurance pool for a number of institutions, starting from DFIs like MIGA or DFC, or ECAs like BPE France, for instance, and ending with private insurance companies that could also be able to try to get this pool and maybe add some leverage to it through issuing some special bonds, and then try to multiply this amount. So the goal is to raise 500 million this year to turn them into 1 billion. That would serve as the war risk insurance potential. So to our understanding, these are like the vital prerequisites for the companies to continue considering Ukraine or to start it from scratch. Just to gain extra comfort, nivellating those commercial and physical risks of the war that is happening. In addition to that, your export credit agency, BPE France, has established a limit for Ukraine, which is equaling 1 billion euros. That was announced in the conference in Bercy by President Macron. Essentially, this billion comprises of two major components. One component is 200 million euros that is being channeled directly from the French Treasury, and this anticipates that only sovereign debt can be attracted, which means that the Ministry of Finance or state-owned enterprises could only get it with a state guarantee, but it can be directed exactly for their immediate recovery, for instance, for the use of the agency of rebuilding, agency of recovery, to build bridges, to rebuild some roads, to rebuild energy infrastructure, to rebuild social infrastructure with schools and hospitals. And then another 800 million is actually the credit risk coverage potential, which is substantially decreasing the risks of the borrower, and thus opening the doors for more concessional financing that could be mobilized from international banks. And since we have here both BNP and Crédit Agricole, I think that they could be keen to provide the financing, having the BP France credit risk insurance on board. And this can work for the private sector. So we can still bring the French equipment, we can still bring some French content to Ukraine and localize it here. I guess that the major requirements would be that the French content is not more than 30-40%, depending on the product, and sometimes it's up to 50%. But the trick is that it can also mobilize local companies, local forces, local materials, local value chain components, which is vital and important for us because we want to support our economies. If you don't know about this program from BP France, I encourage you to know more. Actually, it's not something like invented from scratch. It's not reinventing of the wheel. It's something that's been working years before that. Is the only thing that they extended the limit at this point, and they actually approved it despite the war. They're not covering the war risk damages yet, but they are covering some negative implications of the war that may happen because of this conflict. And in essence, we're talking. We're mobilizing. The company in one industry, one field, it obviously is dragging numerous industries with it, and thus creating the more like clusterized multiple effect. And that's something we want to see. We are open for discussion with the French business. I see two major directions here. First is the immediate recovery, and this is more like working with this agency of rebuilding, making sure that there are some projects that would be relevant for the French companies present here in the call. Another one is if the companies have some business and may potentially consider the expansion of their facilities, that's where we could start talking to institutions for the war risk insurance. And actually, before we set up this trust fund, there are already a couple of active programs that are working. There is Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, MIGA, from the World Bank Group. They kind of keep accepting the applications for the insurance coverage, but they're also raising some reinsurance potential. Although they have some limited exposure, I think that the next limit that they're going to get very soon will be $30 million. They could allocate within the coming months. Then there is Development Finance Corporation from USA, the DFC, that traditionally was aimed to support American business, but now they waived this requirement for Ukraine and Moldova, and basically it means that any project coming from any country with any investment could be supported by them. They also have this political violence risk insurance tool instrument that is essentially the war risk coverage, where they where they cover the majority of risks, and they already considering number of applications from Ukrainian enterprises, for instance, to cover this. They also provide lending, soft loans directly from them, and they also do the credit risk guarantees that could mobilize the capital of other financial institutions like BNP or Dédié. The overall limit for Ukraine is also 1 billion. And the war risk insurance component is roughly 200 because they can't exceed this proportion. And actually, they're going to be their mission is going to be in Ukraine on the 5th and 6th of April. And we have this platform Advantage Ukraine, which is working under the initiative of the president. It started as a marketing campaign, but it ended up with more like a platform for consolidation of the investment opportunities. It employs the team of former investment banking, private equity, and Big Four professionals supported by USAID that actually has the number of feasible projects already accumulated there. It does provide the bridging and navigation for the applicants to discover available capital markets and financial instruments that are available. And this is sort of being derived by the government, because the government is the one that is opening the door first, and then we're making sure that the product is available, and we channel this information through the teams like Advantage. They in particular can help with application to DFC or to MIGA, and they already submitted a number of projects, and DFC chosen them to be the origination team in Ukraine. So, but they're also collecting ideas and like feasible projects from local companies looking for investors from abroad then. So if there are some ideas how to expand the business, or somebody's looking for the JV with specific industries, we're really putting a big bet on the agricultural processing. For instance, we do understand that the renewable energy is really big thing, because we can be the powerhouse for Europe. We're aiming at logistics, creating additional facilities for transportations, warehouses, etc. We're looking at the wood processing, furniture processing. So we have a number of projects accumulated in these fields, and we can add more projects if need be. So the team can help navigate with DFC, do the proper introductions again if that's needed. We are working with VPE France, so they could extend their coverage to include number of those war risks that would be more relevant to the current situation. They are not kind of super keen to do this now, but they are working on it, so they're exploring, and this may be the case that some of their potential could be redirected to this trust fund, the general trust fund, which can then be available for a number of international companies, including the French companies. So that's in general framework. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for this introduction. Maybe two points of interest. You were mentioning BP, yes, of course, and with certain limits in what they do and what they cannot do. Maybe in terms of political risk insurance, because this is indeed going to be the big topic. You mentioned MIGA, you mentioned other actors that have launched and started programs for Ukraine. There is one topic maybe which we hear from certain of our members. They are already, and it's not in relation to an investment, but in relation to exports towards Ukraine of their goods. Sometimes they face the difficulties that the insurance companies in France are saying we do not cover Ukraine anymore as a destination country. Then the question is how to obtain a coverage the liability of these products in Ukraine. Have you already encountered this point? Is there a solution to that, or how is the situation? Maybe briefly on that. That would be maybe the first point. And then the second point, maybe if you could, you talked about the platform advantage Ukraine, which I saw that one person gave a link to the platform on the forum. Maybe if you give us a bit more on how does it work and how what success you already see from it, and how you see the thing evolving in practice for businesses. Thank you very much.
Well, in terms of insurance, I would assume you're talking about insuring the cargo vehicles or the railway cars. There is a special program now developed in the Ministry of Rebuilding. Like, for instance, it is insuring the vessels, the ships, and I think they're also aiming to do something for the railway cars, where the government is basically providing some special guarantee funds on the escrow account that can be used by the insurance companies or the operators to insure these mobile assets. Because the one that I was talking about, like the war risk insurance, more like capex insurance, capital expenditures, where you create something in Ukraine with big investments. While if you're in the trading operations, it's a little different, and that's where the state is now setting up these funds to reinsure, to give the comfort to the insurance companies. But I think that we should be understanding the problem more. So if you have specific cases of the insurance companies from France, for instance, that are rejecting the idea to insure the transport vehicles or something. It'd be really helpful if you could let us know, or maybe put us in touch with them and see what their arguments are, what they in particular are not ready to cover, because this will also help us, and we will pass this information to the Ministry of Rebuilding that will help them design the program to give the comfort. Maybe we could use BP France to some extent here. Maybe some of the limit could be allocated from their side to cover this. Maybe there will be some other solution, but again, we just need to know the problematic a little bit deeper. We were trying to tackle the same issue with Poland, for instance, and we've designed some program that is currently being discussed in the government, and hopefully is going to be approved, and their export credit agency KUKE is involved in that. So we just need to know more details about this, and that would help us to design the proper solution.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could share this through Julia, and then we can take a look at this. Then answering the question on Advantage Ukraine. So the way it works, there is sort of like behind the scenes work that is done by the team that is accumulating the projects and actually verifying them for the sake of feasibility, not to offer something that is not worth considering. Just this is the prime objective, to save time and efforts to do the professional analysis. The applicants could come through the platform, and there is an application form there. So the investment sort of like menu is not on the site for numerous reasons, because some of the info is a little sensitive. Some of the info, like we do not want to circulate like the projects. So far, we've accumulated feasible projects for amount of roughly $8 billion. But we're happy to share them, and the way it works, we're sharing them after the application. So whoever's interested should come and filter their request, saying, okay, I'm the strategic investor, I'm looking for the target in Ukraine, or I'm the JV partner that is looking again, for the JV partner in Ukraine in these industries. I'm interested in agri or logistics or energy or metallurgy. I don't know. So then you also outline. Well, there are a number of like filtering lines that are narrowing the request, and then it gets to the team. And then the team is responding in a due manner and then sending those opportunities that are relevant for this request. And we just take it from there. You can also say that I'm not looking for targets, but I'm looking for investments as well, or looking for the debt financing because I have a facility in Ukraine, or where I do have a projects that I want to expand in Ukraine. This also helps them to figure out the objective and then try to help you with relevant response. After the projects are passed to this execution stage, after we figure out that there is an investor or the lender, we put them together, we do the proper introductions, and the deal structuring starts. After the deal structuring ends and the investment actually happens, we are transferring this process to Ukraine Invest, which is the investment promotion agencies, the investment agency in Ukraine. Their main goal is to make sure that the investors, foreign investors that are coming to Ukraine, have a business comfort. They're not facing some challenges. They're not facing unfair treatment from inspections or some different government bodies, and they are immediately signaling this back to the government that is trying to find a way how to resolve the issue if it happens. They are doing the troubleshooting if it happens. They're introducing the investors to regional administrations, tax administrations. So we're kind of splitting these tasks. So we're on the cutting edge of attracting the investments, verifying feasible projects, making sure that the parties meet each other, that they find the common dialogue, which is based on professional calculations, assumptions, and analysis. And then once the decision is taken, we are attracting investment to Ukraine that is doing all the other government relations work.
Okay, thank you very much. You were talking about relations with the administrations and sometimes difficulties. Of course, it's known that it has been over the past years quite an issue in Ukraine and slowing down also investments. Can you tell us what is currently being done to tackle corruption in Ukraine? What are the actions currently taken and during these difficult times by Ukraine that probably understand the difficulty of this situation for the future also?
Well, in terms of the petty corruption, if I call it, where you're facing these challenges with some local administrations or tax authorities or the bodies, what we are currently doing, we've started this massive deregulation process where we've created an interdepartmental task force based on the Ministry of Economy that is verifying either outdated or duplicating or not relevant permits, licenses, requirements. So we're canceling them with big amounts. We're gathering line ministries, different ministries, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Healthcare, Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, and we're getting some suggestions from them, which we're passing through this interdepartmental task force, and gradually canceling, because we want to simplify the whole procedure of doing business in Ukraine. What we can cancel, we're transferring to the digital form, and this is another way to treat it. We want to digitalize number of services, and this eliminates the human factor, and this eliminates the potential for corruption. We're seriously thinking about doing some effective changes to the legislation that would allow to do the land rezoning. For instance, you can potentially turn the agricultural land into commercial or industrial land. Again, the whole algorithm and the process is currently being verified, very simplified, but still with the preservation of the control from the regional authorities. And digitalizing this also, you'll be able to change the designation of your land subject to having some urban development documents within the course of months, maybe less. And now it may take you like half a year, even more. And then you can see the general framework of the anti-corruption bodies that is currently actually becoming to the frontline scene. And you know that the high anti-corruption prosecutor was appointed, that the new head of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau was appointed, and they are working to make sure that the top level corruption doesn't actually happen and is eliminated. As I said, these petty corruption stuff we're fixing with deregulation and digitalization, and I think that's the way to do this. Again, if you have some specific cases where you're facing problems or challenges, there are a number of institutions. First, it's like Ukraine Invest, they can do troubleshooting, or there is the Business Ombudsman Institution supported by EBRD, where we talk to them constantly, and they're delivering the problematic issues to us that we're gradually tackling in the government. What else? And then when we're going to be working with this Ministry of Rebuilding and Recovery, we're going to be performing the actual operational works. We are creating a transparent and accountable procurement tool, which will be based on the World Bank procurement system. It will be upgraded to the current needs, but again, it ensures the transparency of the contest, it ensures the accountability, it ensures that there will be no prerogatives given to somebody who doesn't want to win unfair. So we're making sure that this will be in place as well.
Thank you very much. I'm turning to Maud because I don't see the questions. So maybe you can select one question from the auditors or prepare a few questions. In the meantime, Mr. Gryban, can you, as a Vice Minister for Economy, can you tell us how you see this year, maybe 2023, after the shock of last year? What are the positive sides and what are the challenges for this year, and where do you believe maybe opportunities for more precise opportunities for investments lie? Thank you very much.
Well, the last year was difficult for sure, and the economy shrunk 30%. We were expecting it's going to shrink more, 38, 39. We still managed to preserve some macroeconomic stability, also sound policy, monetary policy of the National Bank, monitoring inflation, working with the reference rate, which of course for us doesn't add too much surplus for the business, but we understand that these are the measures that we will not be able to live without, and you can see the outcomes. The latest IMF mission has actually approved the chunk of financing, which will stabilize the budget deficit. So budget deficit is pretty much covered at the moment by US, EU, and the IMF funds that have been provided. Then the second basket for the recovery, immediate recovery of rebuilding schools and stuff is also defined, and it's actually already verified and approved by the World Bank in their rapid damages and needs assessment report 2. It's RDNA 2. It figured out that the immediate needs for recovery for this year are 14.1 or 14.2 billion dollars. That includes the rebuilding, it includes the demining, and it includes almost $1.9 billion for the economic support programs, out of which more than $1 billion will be coming through the IFI structures. We do anticipate some moderate growth in the economy this year. Again, it will be subject to how the battlefront and the war develops. But our initial forecast that the economy may grow at least 2% this year. So that's the goal.
Thank you very much. Maud,
yes, I think Florian Garnier has a question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Maud, for letting me in, and good morning also to Bertrand and Vice Minister. As you know, in agriculture sector, there is high volatility on the prices. And thanks to the Odessa corridor, we have been able to sell in the last month. I will say, since October, the situation has gone very normal. But as we see prices on the Black Sea, not only Ukraine but the whole Black Sea, Russia, Romania, and so on, we see a very high differential into the prices paid in Odessa and FOB prices on other ports. And as we understand, this is a margin of operators in the port. This is the difference of price between CPT and FOB. And some other countries on this Black Sea have taken those last weeks some regulations because this let's say, attacks all the treasury and the cash flow of the farmers. You know that the inputs those last years have risen very high, and we are not competitive anymore. Banks which are now following us could confirm, and the situation, let's say, is still acceptable for 2022. But what is going to be the next year? Is the government aware of this, and is it expected to take some regulatory measures in order to prevent this, let's say, port opportunities and do not make any inflations on the agricultural sector?
Well, thank you for this question. I'm afraid it's more relevant for the Ministry of Rebuilding, former Ministry of Infrastructure. Let me put a note on this one and get back to you once I know the answer, because frankly speaking, I'm not really in the context of this issue, unfortunately. I hear from you that there is this issue, but actually I didn't hear of it before. So let me take a pause and we'll get back with an email.
Thank you for listening.
Now we have a question of Florence Dufour from Alstom. Florence? On vous entend pas, on ne vous entend pas. Florence, on n'a pas entendu votre question. Any adaptation to localization requirement law due to work context?
Well, probably not on this stage. I don't think that we will be changing the law on localization because of the work conditions. And the idea is that if there is a public procurement coming from the state or state-owned enterprise, then the certain level of localization should be preserved and should be done in Ukraine. As I said before, this is a key requirement for us because it envisages the engagement of the Ukrainian companies and Ukrainian suppliers, and this is really important for us. And I don't see any like inclinations from the parliament or from the government to do some changes in this law at this stage. So probably no.
And no more question in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Vice Minister, maybe you were talking about decentralization. How do you, it started, it's a process that started already before the war. It's something that you see as a positive step. What can be the opportunities there in terms of the various regions and localization where to invest?
Well, the decentralization is obviously a very important process that was launched a while ago, and it's a very successful reform. It gives more power to the regional governments, communities, municipalities, and now during the martial laws, some elements of budget spending that they were normally having are a bit restricted, but I think this will gradually be released, so they will again have ability to develop. And a number of them have very interesting projects for developing local infrastructure. And for instance, we're going to have the first PPP project with Lviv, and they are also preparing their investment opportunities, both through municipal companies and private companies. Well, municipal companies can obviously issue the municipal guarantee. Sometimes it can be supported by the government guarantee. And there are some special programs of institutions like EBRD or European Investment Bank that are supporting local municipalities, providing financing for development of infrastructure. So this is ongoing, and we see that it should be developed and should be supported even more.
Okay, thank you. One word maybe about European integration. There has been a lot of talks, of course, about Ukraine moving as a candidate country. Can you tell us where you stand now, how you see things in the process and the adaptation of the work on the adaptation of the regulations and legislations in Ukraine? What is your program on that, and how do you see the next steps maybe?
Well, we are constantly working on approximation of the EU acquis, EU set of legislation, and we actually now the European Commission is going to issue this it's called enlargement report, which will cover all the current efforts that were undertaken by the government and the parliament, and how it's gonna match EU legislation. So yeah, we're actively working in this direction, providing approximation of certain industries in terms of legislation. We have a DG Near Commission run by Gert Jan Koopman, who is the ultimate kind of responsible for Ukraine to provide this approximation. But we also working separately with different commissioners. Actually, every new legislative change that we are currently implementing, we are passing through European Commission and via European delegation to get their feedback and to see maybe there is something we missed or something that is that should be covered, but it's not there. So we're working closely with European Union, and we really hope for this to happen in the near future.
Okay, Mr. Vice Minister, thank you very much. Maud, any other questions, reactions, or?
No, nothing.
Okay, so Mr. Vice Minister, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
It was a good introductory. We will, if we have more, as you said, if we have more precise questions and topics, we will take the liberty maybe to address them directly to you and your team. We propose to keep in touch. We, of course, we are here if there is any questions on your side or messages to give to the community, and we should continue and collaborating and trying to see how we can assist in the reconstruction of the Ukraine as soon on the short term as on the longer term. So, Mr. Vice President, my Minister, sorry, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your time today, and thanks to all the participants today.
Thank you, Bertrand. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Stay in touch.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye.